Okay, guys, looks like we're live. We're going to be talking with Sam Trautwein of Carbon.money. He'll be joining us very soon here. Today we're going to be talking about stable coins and the general market stuff, how to use stable coins, and we're bringing in somebody who is very much an expert in stable coins and other things like that. That's Sam Trautwein, and he's going to be joining us here pretty soon. Hey Diego, hey Kimberly, hey Everett, how's it going? Hey Ashley. Yeah, we're just waiting for Sam to join on mobile, so just give us a few moments here. But there's a few things that we're going to go over. So one is like, I want to learn about how some of these people got into crypto. Talking about stable coins, we're talking about carbon money, we're talking about how people are using carbon, some of the main use cases of stable coins. We'll also be talking about some of the recent events that Sam has been attending. Thanks for joining, guys. Oh man, I'm gonna miss Crypto HQ. This is better though. It looks like Sam is connecting. Sam, there you are. What's up, dude? Hey, sometimes there's a little bit of latency, so sorry about that. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, it looks like I can hear you now. Cool. Looks like we're synced.
Okay, cool, perfect.
Right on, dude. Thanks for
Nice.
coming on to do this. As you know, I've been doing this for a couple weeks now. And what's up, Everett? Feel free to jump in and answer anybody's questions at any time. If somebody has any random questions, you just want to jump in. It's really informal. I wanted to start out with, like a little introduction. I've already introduced you, but if you don't mind kind of like telling people who you are and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Sam Trautwein. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Carbon, which is a stablecoin project. My background, I grew up in the Dominican Republic, which is, I think, part of the reasons why I got involved in crypto so early, just because like when you're exposed to developing world infrastructure, you just kind of appreciate robustness more. But yeah, so I studied computer science with concentration in AI at Stanford and started
Very nice.
working on, yeah, it was fun. But I was on the founding team of the first ag tech unicorn while I was there, Plenty. We were doing AI and hydroponics, and I started working on Carbon in June of 2017 with the other Stanford guy, Gavin, who was at Uber at the time. And yeah,
Nice.
we were live on ETH and EOS, and we are excited to be kind of building the future we want to live in.
Cool, cool. So that's like one of the more like big announcements that you guys have is the like first EOS stablecoin. Can you tell us
Yeah,
a little bit
first and
more
only.
about that? And like, yeah, cool. I like that.
So we're yeah, so we're the first and only stablecoin, and we did this. Crypto's changed a lot since when we first started like working in the space. Like back in June of 2017, whenever I would go to a party and people would find out I'm in crypto, they would find it, whoever else was in the party was touching crypto and connect us. And it's the entire space has
Mhm.
changed a ton since those days. Like we were, I was mining, in my dorm freshman year. Like I got much more involved in kind of just the community in like late 2016. And one of the things that we really, it's kind of bothered me is there's way more talking and way less actually building. And so we decided to build on EOS. We actually waited a bit before we did it just because other people kind of announced they were going to, and we just kind of wanted to see whether or not they deliver. And when we realized that the other groups were just kind of all words and no action, we decided to just kind of go and do it. And that's kind of been our approach towards things. Like we're just going to keep building other people's announcements and just kind of to cite Khrushchev, we will bury you.
Right
But
on. So,
yeah, so
so I,
we're technical. Yeah,
sorry to cut in. There's a little bit of latency, so we're gonna have to deal with that. But I'm just thinking like I always like to ask people like how they actually got into crypto and try to keep the conversation like as high level as possible, only because not everybody's technical, but we will get into some of the technical
yeah,
stuff for
definitely.
sure. But how did you get into it and why do you care about crypto? I mean, I know that a part of it has to do with where you're from and stuff, right? But
Yeah. So, I mean, which one first? Okay, so how I got
yeah,
into it.
yeah.
So I had back in high school, I had a business building and selling gaming desktops. So I brought a bunch of these things with me to college, and I realized that freshman fall at Stanford wasn't going to be a time in my life where I played a lot of video games.
Hmm.
So I decided to kind of convert them all into miners. And so I started just kind of messing around. This was back in 2014. So I started messing around with like just the blockchain and so forth back at that point. Uh, the reason I saw the value proposition, I mean, we had a president, Hippolyto Mejia, who I don't remember what year it was. I was young, but he managed to double. He managed to inflate the currency in the Dominican Republic 100% in 1 year. So all the prices for everything doubled.
Mm.
The credit markets were wiped out. We had problems buying gas. We generally buy gasoline as an island on credit. We had problems buying gasoline to those gas lines. And the guy lost the next election. The opposing party ran on the campaign. ¿Quién subió el precio de los huevos? Like, who raised the price of eggs? And he was ousted from power on like on that campaign slogan. And so crypto decentralization, like once you've experienced kind of the risks of centralization, or what can happen when centralization goes awry, the benefits of decentralization are much more obvious.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of why that's why I got involved. How I got involved
The
was the
mining.
gaming
That's cool.
desktops.
So you repurposed it.
Yeah.
So it was GPU mining at that point then, yeah? Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
there wasn't really ASICs
Yeah,
back
so
then.
like a little background of like how old school I am is that I actually used to mine Bitcoin on a CPU back in the day. So, but we have a few other people that joined. It looked like Corey, Christian, Brian, Matt, and Richard joined. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Okay, so that kind of like leads to my next question I want to ask you is that I'm hoping that people that watch this video can get kind of a basic understanding of stablecoins. I honestly think in me, even as a technologist and engineer, and I'm hearing a lot of people, they're like, that's what crypto's all about right now. That's where things are going. And I've heard that the year 2017 is going to be referred to, you know, the year of HODL, which didn't work out too great for some people. And then the 2018 is the year of BUIDL. And that is going to be like, you know, where we're building shit and we're kind of focused. But I've also heard a lot
Hmm.
of people say that stable coins are everything, and but let's I want to hear it from you. Like, why do you think people would say this about stable coins? Like, why is it such a big deal? We have Gemini and all these other players coming in. Why does this matter, and what should we be looking out for, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very noisy space, and we're actually I one of the benefits of bear markets are that it kind of diminishes the amount of noise. I don't think stable coins are going to be. I don't think. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a year. And it's not going to be something where someone cracks it. It's just going to be it's just going to be the
Hmm.
solution. Like there's a lot of like generally speaking, it's a very complex and very nuanced field and very technical because it's even inside crypto, there's a lot of different fields that kind of combine to make or stablecoins require expertise in a lot of different fields to actually do effectively. I guess from a very high level, what stablecoins, let's just kind of start very high
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah, sure.
Stablecoins are, yeah, so stablecoins are the idea that that cryptocurrency would be better if it was less volatile. This is a super common idea on Wall Street. Like the entire purpose of hedge funds is hedging out uh, like volatility or just risks you don't want to take. So it's something like to give you an example, I mean, from my childhood when the peso doubled, that's volatility. From the crypto space, I accidentally made 30% when I was trying to transfer money between two exchanges because the plane took off before the transfer went through. And when I landed, it was up 30%. But anything that can go up can also go down. And it makes, generally speaking, most people would prefer for most money that it doesn't go up and down. There's a reason we don't buy everything we buy with lottery
Yeah, yeah.
tickets, and that's kind of what crypto without stable coins is. It's kind of an
So do
economy of
you think
lottery
that
tickets because
like
lottery tickets don't make
do you
great
think
money.
that this is something that like institutions care more about because they are moving massive amounts of money? 5% volatility is a really big deal if you have a lot of money. So is this something that doesn't matter? Because to me, I consider myself more on the user or like the developer, the DApp developer side.
Hmm.
And sorry if I cut out a little bit. Sometimes I'll get calls on my phone, but I don't honestly um,
Mhm.
like fuck with stable coins on a daily basis. You know what I mean? Whereas like right now I'm kind of
Yeah.
playing around with EOS pretty regularly, but like is this something that
Mhm.
matters to an end user or to a dApp developer as much, or is it more like you're a financial institution and you're dealing with large amounts of money? Like where does this really
Mhm.
matter?
We think it's going to matter a lot to dApp developers just because
Mm,
it will simplify gas projections. So I guess I don't want to get too technical, but
mm.
generally speaking, if you are budgeting for something, you want your budget to be as accurate as possible.
Sure. And when you mean gas
And
price, but like right now you're talking about like, well, so stable coins for Ethereum, or you mean EOS, or
so with EOS it'd be RAM, I
okay,
suppose, but with Ethereum, I'll just start, like I think more people are going to be familiar
sure.
with Ethereum. So currently, if we run a bunch of smart contracts, we have to buy gas for the smart contracts.
Hmm.
Like a great example use case for stablecoins for a dApp developer would be setting up a system for storing the money for gas in a stablecoin and only buying as much as you need whenever you need it, because this will make it easier to budget. But we're expecting stablecoins to be foundational for most fee collection, for just
Hmm.
paying dues, for dividend distribution, because it doesn't make sense to have unnecessary volatility.
Yeah, I see. So, and the way that I've always thought of it, and the way that I could understand it is, it's like you have your money in fiat, right? And you might even just want to make some investments. And this is one place where I've actually used stable coins is like, let's say that you decided for the next quarter you want to move $50,000 in fiat through different investments in the crypto market. Well, all of your money's in fiat right now, so literally you cannot move that money very fast. You'd have to buy in and wait for the money to process, right?
Mhm.
But if you could just move all of that money into a stable coin, now your money is like in the matrix. Well, I guess not the matrix, but it's in the
Yeah.
crypto matrix. And then now
Mhm.
you can deploy the capital a lot easier. And to me, it's more about, yeah, you have it and it's kind of like your currency is truly digitized or it's cryptoized, right? And then you can move it faster, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way that I understand it.
Mhm. I mean, no, I think that's a very great starting point. We think it can be much, much bigger
Mhm.
than that. So back home, there's no online shopping back home,
Mhm.
and that's partially to a lack of a postal system, but it's also largely due to the fact that most people don't have credit or debit
Mhm.
cards. So banking access is kind of a first world luxury that just isn't really universal anywhere besides, I mean, the U.S. and Europe, and to some extent now Asia. But we really think that these things can be the main mechanism uh, for onboarding most of humanity into the digital economy,
I see. So that kind of makes
more so
sense.
than
So
crypto
so
proper.
let's say maybe I have access to the internet, but I don't have a bank or anything like that.
Yeah.
Welcome, Jacob. And so like I might know that
Hey, Jacob.
over the next, the next 3 months, I want to spend $500 on some Christmas gifts. I want to buy some shit from Amazon. Maybe they even have
Yeah.
shipping, but they don't have banks, or maybe the bank isn't that easy to access. If I could just put
Mhm.
$500 like equivalent in one of these emerging markets into a stable coin. Now that money is online and I have purchasing power at this point and I have stability. There's not as much volatility. Maybe, I mean, there should be much less
Yeah.
volatility than my local currency because a lot of these places that don't have banks are suffering from volatility, right? So that, I mean, that makes a lot of
Mhm.
sense to me. It's just like I actually can have purchasing power in an emerging economy. Like it might not matter to
Exactly.
me
Yeah.
when I go to buy my Christmas gifts on Amazon because I just use my, whatever card I use. But like to somebody who
Mhm.
literally doesn't have this card, this gives them purchasing power of some kind, right? So
Yeah.
great. Okay.
Well, it's a much bigger deal than that even, because a lot of people in a lot of places don't have. So there's two real issues here. One is a lot of people just don't have identities,
Hmm.
and the other issue, and that kind of ties into the other issue, which is a lot of countries, and you touched on this loosely, but a lot of countries don't offer. They have high inflation rates, high volatility, mass amounts of corruption, and so and that also leads into why people don't have identities, or identities we can really trust, because like identity is in many ways a product of, like, governments are the people who create identities for citizens. And what's interesting, one of the appeals of crypto which stablecoins really are, which also applies to stablecoins, is that it's trustless.
Hmm.
So you don't need to have, there's no central issuer. You're not dependent on your credit score at the bank. You're not dependent on the bank knowing who you are. Anyone, it's equal, it's incredibly democratic
Hmm.
because a dollar of carbon to you is a dollar of carbon to me, which is also worth a dollar of carbon to any refugee anywhere who doesn't have a passport. And so in that sense, yeah, like it might make sense for you if you're like traveling somewhere and it'll let you interact with the local
Hmm.
like digital economy cheaper. But it makes way more sense. Like, stable cryptocurrencies in general and stablecoins specifically are one of the first just tech products that will have more of an impact on the developing world than the
Okay.
developed.
So,
There are $9 trillion of like,
mhm. I see. And sorry for the
so
latency
there's,
again, guys. There's a little bit, but
yeah,
welcome, Rick and Sophia. So I, like, let's drill down on that more because this is like a big topic that people talk about a lot, like emerging economies, people
yeah,
without banks, the quote unquote bankless people. And for me personally, like, I think it's a bunch of fluff. Like, I think that if you like if we imagined it in one metric, like how many people without banks have actually been banked because of cryptocurrency? Like, my guess is that
mm,
number is not something that we should be proud of
oh, it's tiny.
right now. And so, like, if we start to talk about stable coins as achieving part of this goal, like, how do you do that? Like, how would you do that? Like, which country would we want to? Because it seems like there's a lot of conflicts between these governments don't want there to be a quote unquote fiat on ramp into a stable coin because their leverage is over the dollars. They don't, the less people use their funny money, the fiat funny money, the less power they have. And
Oh
so they're
yeah,
going to do whatever they can to stop it. So it's almost like, in a way, the thing that I would worry about this approach is that now we've put a cryptocurrency directly up against a government, which these other cryptos, in my opinion, they're not really like EOS isn't really going against a government or going against the will of some government. I mean, maybe in some places, but the overall thing of just ease of transactions and like gaming and stuff, which is kind of what's emerging from EOS, is an easier sell.
hmm,
So like, how would you go about approaching this in a way that is actually impactful?
sure, yeah. I mean, this is a huge problem, and this ties back into. So I'm going to break it into two questions. One is kind of the developing
Yeah.
world side, and the other is sort of working with
Okay.
foreign governments. Uh, we are in this, we've been in this space for a long time. We will be in this space for a long time. We're not, this isn't a short, we haven't done a token sale. We're not going to do a token sale. We're a fintech company specializing in value transfer, and we believe stablecoins are a useful product to achieve that goal. The, this isn't going, this isn't something that's going to get just fixed overnight. This is kind of a longer term, this is a longer term
And
journey that
I want
we're
to
all on together as a
interject really
society.
quick just on this one part of like when I like I'm wondering like in the last week have 100 people because I get it like we're never gonna be able to fucking change this thing over like not overnight, not in 5 years. I don't get
Yeah.
it, but I'm wondering like where the real legit like who is onboarding 100 people in even 1 week, that kind of shit. Like how do we make something like that happen, you know? But sorry to
I mean,
interject.
so our goal, no, yeah, not at all. It's fine. Uh, we're not even sure we're not even sure that we are close to where we need to be for that.
Mm,
So we're mostly focused on basically building banking infrastructure for specific underbanked just industries and
mm,
communities. And we're making a lot of plays there because we're focused on building. We believe a lot of this is infrastructure.
mm,
And that's why we're taking an engineering first approach on just building things out. And we're fostering relation. One of the reasons we opted to so our entire team is Californian,
mm.
but one of the reasons we've opted to base this thing in Manhattan
Uh-huh.
um, is just because
It's a really
we
nice view,
we
by the
believe
way.
it's very
Yeah.
important. Yeah,
It's pretty
I
fancy
mean, we
here.
thought if we were
Yeah.
doing New York, we may as well do it. Yeah, if we're doing New York, we may as well do New York, right? But the we we thought it was very important for us to work with incumbents to like basically leverage what the existing financial ecosystem does well. And so we think like in many ways we believe stablecoins their main utility is essentially bridging the legacy and future financial system.
Okay.
And so we're working very closely with a lot of the groups out here, and we're very open. We're in talks with a couple of big groups around certain
Hmm.
contracts, but
Okay.
we're very open to working with incumbents, and we believe that's kind of the best approach to solve
Mhm.
problems. Going back to kind of the engineering first approach, to solve real problems
I
for real
see.
people.
Welcome, Chad and
And
Peter. Um, okay, so like maybe we could fast forward a little bit. Like, so you're not trying
mhm,
to solve this problem of tomorrow I'm going to get 100 people that don't have a bank, right?
definitely
Okay.
not.
And I think that if we did look at
Yep.
this problem, I mean, it seems like a really compelling problem for a stable coin to solve, which to me means they have to have an app on mobile because most of these emerging economies have mobile applications. And then they would have to have a fiat on ramp. And like that alone, I mean, in theory, should work for this problem, I would think. And that kind of leads me into the
Yeah.
next topic is that I kind of wanted to talk about how you understand the current landscape of stable coins, like which ones are inspiring, which ones are
For sure.
good, which ones suck and why, like how, and just from a very high level, like how do you understand the current stable coin market?
It's incredibly diverse, which is good.
Hmm.
Uh, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. I get asked a lot by just investors and people, like, what's my biggest fear? A lot of these things are going to go down in flames, but either technically or from a regulatory perspective, and that can really damage both our sector and the space itself.
Okay.
Because very few, moving fast and breaking things is a great motto when you're just a normal tech company that doesn't really work well with financial products, either on the regulatory side or when you wipe out a bunch of retail investors' savings.
Hmm.
Like if you wipe out, if people are using these things to buy groceries and it breaks, congratulations, now like hundreds of people are starving. So we've been we are by far one of the most conservative groups, both in terms of compliance and in terms of just our technical
Hmm.
approach. Like we were originally considering a much more aggressive approach technically, and we opted out of that because we ran. So my background, I did a lot. My last startup was an AI group. Gavin was at Uber's predictions team, and we have a pretty large pool of just colleagues of ours who we just kind of outsource AI
Hmm.
tasks to, or just modeling tasks. And the modeling that we were doing did not really it didn't reflect well either. We still had a conservative approach back then, but it didn't reflect it didn't give us a ton of confidence in our approach and gave us even less in the approaches other people were taking.
Okay.
And so a lot of the not fiat collateralized groups, like even groups like Maker, like there's massive issues around governance and massive issues around basically the price of margin posing a threat as that system scales and as markets become more liquid. And so I guess what I'm saying, so there's groups that are going to collapse on the technical front. There's systems just aren't going to scale well, and there's groups that are going to collapse on the regulatory front because they haven't crossed the T's and
How do
dotted
you
their
feel
I's.
about
We are
like
pursuing mass,
Gemini and stuff like that? Like, because that's a pretty new one on the scene, and they're pretty large
yeah,
and ambitious, and that's from the Winklevoss, right?
mhm,
So,
yeah.
what do you think about them? Like,
So
is this a good token, and are like what do you believe is going to happen with them?
I'm a huge fan of probably the three big fiat-backed groups. So like Circle, Gemini, and Paxos are doing a lot to kind of drive the space
Hmm.
forward. Just because like there's some degree I don't really want to get into the weeds here, just
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we like this gets into privileged
Sure,
information.
sure. Yeah, I don't want to. I like
Um,
just. It could even
but
be opinions. Like, I think backed
yeah,
sucks because of this, but I get it. You could reveal some of your own internal technology, and I don't want to do that. It's more of
sure.
like I just want to kind of like
Oh no,
educate
it's more like so it's
people, you know.
more. So we've talked to a couple of
Uh,
these groups about a couple of things, and they have interesting opinions on each other.
hmm.
But generally speaking, I think all three of these are. I don't view any of those three as. I think all three of those will survive longer term. There's very smart people tied to each of those projects,
Hmm.
and they're generally playing pretty conservatively when it comes to just compliance.
I see.
But
Okay, and then like, but like, for me, I guess the thing that I'm really having a hard time sort of understanding is that like are these companies like let's just say backed in Circle and Gemini, because I don't do a lot of thorough reading on them because it's like not the
yeah,
most like sexy part of the industry. I mean, like
well, it's pretty boring.
I
Yeah,
have to admit though, like part of it is because I'm so into EOS and learning about EOS and like general blockchain
mm,
knowledge. I'm just curious, like, what do you see as the big difference between those three stable coins? Like, what do they offer that's super unique? Like, is it more about connections or is it about actual
Well,
technology, you think?
so I'm not a lawyer by trade, so take all this with a grain
Mm,
of salt, because I've just kind of picked all this up since
yeah.
being like in this
Mm,
business in this
mm,
sector. All three of them have slightly different so none of this is really, this is kind of where a lot of the risk is. This is why we want to move up past fiat collateralization at some point, but because none of this is really public and won't necessarily ever be public
mm,
unless these things fall
yeah, yeah.
apart. But the regulatory stack for all these things, each of those three actually has a pretty different regulatory
Mm,
stack in terms of what licenses they have, what charters they have, and how all the parties involved interact. And this is all this is specified in contracts between each of the parties. And these contracts only get made public, basically, if things go wrong.
okay.
But so the structures behind each of those are, all three of those actually have pretty different structures. And one of the things we view as a competitive edge. So we pulled in. There's a company called TransferWise. They're one of the bigger remittance companies. We have their head of legal for North America as a corporate counsel,
Mm,
and we've just put a lot of effort into building the lightest weight fiat-backed structure that anyone else that's out there. So we actually have, and we'll cover this more. We'll cover this more in detail at some future point. But we have one of the, of all four of us, we have the lightest weight structure,
okay.
or the lightest weight structure that has legitimate people, like that has legitimate legal
Okay.
backing. And we view this as a big advantage in the sense that it allows us to operate. And if you have a banking charter, for example, anything a Bank of America can't touch, you can't touch either. And this applies to undocumented aliens. This applies to just fringe
Mm,
industries. And we view having a lighter weight. So by virtue of us having a more lightweight structure, we have more freedom to interact with groups that are
okay.
underbanked. And so all three, yeah. So that's kind of what makes us unique from those three. But all three of those are very different. Even internally, they all have very different structures with
Okay,
who
so a
has
lot of
what
it has to do with
licenses and
like
what
legal. I see what
contracts.
you mean, and I've heard a few things about,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of it has to do with bringing traditional institutions and ETFs in, and that a lot of it has to do with this kind of law. And I'm not going to claim to know a lot about that. I just hear things, but that leads me to like another question. This is probably the last question that I might think is like carbon specific. Is that if I
Sure.
was in the stable coin market, and I did build a stable coin on EOS. One of my first things I might want to do, just the way that I build applications, and I don't really like to talk to
Mhm.
lawyers all the time, and I will if I believe I'm in trouble, but I'd be really just aiming on the adoption of the token, and I'm seeing that EOS has so much action on gambling and gaming, like competitive gaming too, like legit gaming, and there's a lot of transactions and movement of EOS into like an abstracted token that's really not a stable coin. They're just digits in a computer somewhere. They're like
Yeah.
credits or casino chips, and to me that says, well, why aren't we using stable tokens in these scenarios for all of these dApps, and
Yeah.
why not attack the market
Mhm.
there?
Yeah, I mean, so we're actually in talks with a bunch of groups. We haven't made a huge BD push on
Mm-hmm.
EOS yet, and that's kind of one of those things that we're working with people to figure out how we want to approach
Mm-hmm.
that. And like we'll make more announcements there over the coming days
Okay.
probably. But like yeah, like we 100% agree with you that it makes a lot of sense to have deeper integration of stablecoins into EOS gaming. And there's also a lot of use cases with block producers. We're in talks with a lot of people in the space. We haven't really made any announcements yet, but we've generally been, we're not a group. We're a group that builds first, talks about it
Yeah,
later.
I really do appreciate that. I don't want to like press you for any stuff, and you've been pretty liberal, like just in
Yeah.
our own talks. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because I'm excited about what you guys are doing. I think the product looks amazing. You guys are way fucking smarter than me. There's all this cool stuff going on, and I like that. And so the next thing is really like I want people to understand like well, I had one thought while you were talking, and I wanted to just see how you think about this. Is
Mhm.
a lot of these people are making money, and they have a lot of income in EOS, and this also seems like a great opportunity to build some great tools around, all right, I just got this EOS. What, I don't want to speculate on this shit. I don't want to go through and sell it or move it into fiat. Like this to me seems like a great service that a stablecoin could provide is like,
Mhm.
okay, the EOS came in, automatically mint stable tokens into some kind of account. Is this
Yeah.
a good use case or
Mhm.
not?
That's a great use case, and this is something you'll like some of the stuff we're
All
working
right,
on.
all right. So, and I don't know
But
anything
yeah,
about
yeah.
it. I'm just
No, like,
throwing shit out there. So,
well, I mean, no one outside the company does.
uh,
Like, we build, like, we build first, talk about
yeah,
later.
cool. I like that. All right.
But
So,
no, yeah, no, because it's,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, like one of the things. So we're very involved. We think, yeah, we very much believe that the ability to convert between different asset classes is incredibly important for getting any kind of real
Hey, Sam,
adoption. And so
a
we're putting a lot of,
question came in from Casey, and then also Everett said he wants to learn more about stables and gaming. But where would you suggest? I think this is a really good
Mhm.
question that Casey asked. I actually ask myself this same question a lot too, and I'm in EOS every day. Like, where would you suggest? And if you don't know the answer, that's fine. But where would you suggest is the most
Yeah.
secure place to get EOS?
Uh, I think we've all been in crypto for a while. So I think most of the EOS we've used for deployment has, I haven't really asked where it's come from. Like Nick actually drove most of our EOS dev.
Yeah.
So it may just be cold storage though. So we've been involved in the space for, yeah. So we might actually just be using our cold storage reserves, or
Yeah, and I
OTC.
would recommend
But
actually to buy EOS to go to an exchange and
yeah.
also there's a few new services like I've talked with like Fred and a few other people who are really curious of like where to get EOS. I think that
Mm,
your trusted exchange is a pretty good answer. If you're already
yeah.
playing around on an exchange, most likely that exchange will have EOS on it too. And if I do have to recommend an EOS wallet, I do recommend EOS Links. It's the one that I use, and we've had Fred and Fred's a good friend, and they also have a EOS stablecoin. I don't know if it was the first one or not, but I know they claim to be the first one. There's a few, so we'll see who's first. I don't,
Yeah, they were one of those. They were one of those groups. They were one of those groups that announced and just didn't deliver.
Okay, all right, that's pretty controversial. So,
But
but and we do like to have, well, I like to have arguments sometimes and like battles. So maybe
sure,
I think
I'm
that we
100%
should.
down.
But anyways, I would say an exchange is a nice place. But after you buy it
Definitely,
there,
yeah.
I would say move it into a secure storage of some kind. And there's a few EOS wallets, and I would recommend EOS links for that. Okay, so
Yeah.
I hope.
I'd recommend if you
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I'd recommend cold storage. If you're actually buying a lot of EOS, I'd strongly recommend cold storage. Just putting it on a Trezor or Ledger. One of those supports EOS nowadays.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's just generally it's the easiest. It's the best way to keep crypto safe.
Yeah.
But
Okay. And then so I guess the next one is more of like just a general market question. Like, yeah, don't let Fred hear it. No, I like this though. I think that we should all just keep it really honest. But um, so
yeah, no, I'm definitely down to be. I like
yeah,
debates.
so the next thing is just like right now because of this bear market, which I'm pretty open about how I don't really give a fuck about too many of the prices and stuff like that. But what are your opinions about like the pricing that's going on in the markets? Like, what's your overview on that? Like, how do you feel about it?
I think it's
Mm,
healthy. Like I haven't put any fiat into crypto since June of 2017. It was overpriced for most of this past year.
mm,
I think the correction's been, and it's made the space way less of a circus. So from a business standpoint, we're all for it because the space became kind of like one of the reasons that we've been going to so many more conferences is because we feel like we have to because of how much noise is in the space.
yeah.
I'd rather be building.
Yeah, nice. I think that a
I'd
lot
much
of
rather be
people kind
writing
of
code than
agree.
being on
Yeah,
stages.
and then Everett also said that Binance is a pretty nice place for EOS, and I have to like give
Yeah.
Everett some credit. Like Everett's pretty much the tipping point for me. Like I was interested in EOS, and then after I talked to him, I like started really drinking the Kool-Aid. So I'm always thankful for him because it's a big part of my life now. Um, but also, I mean, he's recommending Binance to get EOS too, and I generally trust Everett. He's a pretty technical guy. But okay, so you don't really care, and you feel like It's overall healthy. I feel like that too. And I learned today because I've been starting to watch the Bad Crypto podcast mainly because I've been talking to Travis a little bit, who's one of the hosts there.
Mm,
And I think he's really cool. But then I like started listening to the show more. And one of the things that we have to remind ourselves about bear markets and just like market, like, bubbles popping and stuff like that, is that Ethereum came out of a really dark period in crypto, I feel like. And that, I feel like a lot of people missed it because we were just like, man, this is boring, this sucks. And then like, maybe we should just go
yeah.
back to what we were doing before. And then all of a sudden Ethereum like rose out of the ashes. And I think it caught a lot of people off guard, So I think that if this
Hmm.
is a larger cycle of a bear market, and so in a way, I wouldn't be surprised if dozens of Ethereum scale projects rise out of the ashes on this thing. If the market is still going to continue and Ethereum came out of such a bear market, why wouldn't a dozen Ethereums or projects on that scale come out of it? That's why I think it's a good thing.
No, I completely agree. I think we're moving way too fast. So I think governance and Oracle specifically are two huge problems, and just generally kind of the breaking of KPIs. I'll write something more on
Yeah,
that
yeah,
later at some
cool.
point, I guess. But because like traditional KPIs became kind of, in a decentralized system, KPIs are a huge problem, and that kind of ties into the other two with oracles and governance being just are massive unsolved problems, and we very much outscaled the development on those three
Mhm.
things. And I think the bear market's kind of giving us more. It's making it easier for smart people. When the markets took off, a lot of people got pulled into the space who made it more difficult for smart people to kind of connect and, in a sense, slowed down development
Mhm.
around those kind of core pieces of infrastructure, which are really things we need if we're going to build something that's both scalable and
Hey, what's up,
decentralized.
Jared? Jared just
And
joined too. Um,
nice. Hey,
yeah. So
Jared.
okay, yeah,
So
I get what you're saying.
I think it's, yeah. So I think the bear market, yeah. So I think it's one of those. I think it's good for the space. I think it's healthy. And it's not, I mean, there'll be less Lamborghinis for sure, but I don't think,
Mhm.
generally speaking, people who are like, I don't know any good programmers who aren't able to make, or who aren't able to kind of find something interesting to work on and make like, and live off that in the
Yeah,
space
and
still today.
and for me, what I do, I feel like is actually taken off in the bear market. Like honestly, I have
Exactly.
way
Yeah.
more meaningful discussions that lead to, meaningful revenues than ever in any period in time in these markets. Honestly, like the thing that I'm doing is actually probably like 3x stronger at this very point in time than it was in the absolute height of the pricing. And
Exactly.
so that's why like maybe I have a
Hmm.
little bit of bias, like this shit doesn't matter at all because of my own personal point of view. But what I'm doing is building infrastructure. And so if I see that much action on infrastructure, it means a lot. And I remember thinking this
Exactly.
before, when you see all this money getting dumped in, there's all this money dumped in. It's like, yeah, even if they light half of the money that got dumped into this market on fire, they're going to use those dollars to build a lot of infrastructure, and it's going to be really meaningful. And so like Gemini came
Yeah.
during this bear market technically, right? Like it was like the beginning of the major decline in a lot of these things because they just take time. So that's kind of like my view right now. And I want to be respectful of your time. I said we'd only go to 20 minutes and we're at like,
Oh no, we can
yeah.
keep, like, my phone may
Okay. If
die,
it
but we
dies, then
should
we're
keep.
just
I want to go.
we're
I want to
just
go. I want to go
done.
until it
We're
does.
just
Yeah.
done. So, like
No.
any other kind of like, I like to ask people about insights about like what do you know that you believe is unique or something that you think might even be an unpopular view. I really love to learn these things from people because I think that they're some of the most insightful things that I've learned. Like, what would you say you can add value in as far as like insights in the market or any part of it?
Sure. I mean, something that was really interesting, and this was, I can't really take credit for this, but a mentor of mine, like at one point pointed out that the volatility and frothiness of the crypto markets is actually super irrational because the market has no idea where value will end up being captured.
Hmm.
So just the crazy swings, the just massive just kind of changes of emphasis on where people are investing. It's actually really rational. Like people think it's crazy and irrational and noisy, but it's actually really rational behavior because we're all kind of
Hmm.
learning, and there's not really no one really has any idea what's going to end up capturing value as the space matures.
Yeah, this is interesting because I was revisiting some like Hegel texts from I know that people don't really
I
read
love Hegel.
philosophy anymore, but I think that it was interesting because
Some
part
of
of
us do.
his core part of his philosophy is about like how like cultural shifts happen, like they kind of go from
Yep.
one side of the spectrum to the other, and that actually they're super important and almost essential for building like any kind of equilibrium or peace or prosperity or whatever.
Mm,
And it reminds me of the crypto markets because you have these crazy bad bear markets and then you have these crazy good sort of like booms in the market. And then right now, to me, I feel like this is sort of like an equilibrium. Like I feel like this market is really healthy right now, that like prices kind of started
yep.
making sense to me. Like EOS at $100, it didn't really seem right to me. I mean, not that it ever hit $100, but that's like where it was going. And I like the rationality because if you're a long-term thinker here, it's like, well, if this shit is just going to buckle and go away and it's some kind of fad, well, my DApp development labor that I'm doing is really meaningless, right? And so I think that a lot of people are subconsciously getting this. Like if you see a lot of people dumping in their energy into infrastructure, and they're pretty intelligent people, I would say, like they're pretty forward thinking people, they would never do that if they didn't believe that there was some substantial value that was going to be created over time because it takes time, right? So
Yeah.
it feels healthy to me at
Hmm.
this point.
No, and I couldn't agree more. I think that where prices are at now is making people be more intentionally more thoughtful. Like I had a friend during the spring, I had a friend who wrote a script to invest 2 ETH. He had an RSS feed. It was feeding ICOs.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote a script that would just kind of throw 2 ETH into every ICO. It showed up in this. Like that is, and people were, and he was making money because the markets were crazy, and people always kind of assume there's greater fools at the end of the, like at the end,
Yeah,
as long as there's someone dumber who will buy it at a higher price, you'll make
yeah,
money. And I think in these markets, people are being more intentional with what they spend money on and what they invest
mm-hmm.
in. And I think that's driving the dialogue forward and resulting in just building a better
Yeah,
infrastructure.
yeah. I
But
saw this thing that I thought was really interesting. Somebody did some really great analysis. I think they built it in R or something like that. But they said, look, from this
mm,
period to this period, which was really long. I mean, maybe short for crypto markets, but it was maybe like 6 month to year period or whatever it was. It was pretty long for crypto markets. They're like, look, you
yeah,
could have literally chosen shit at random. A monkey could have made a lot of money during this period
yeah,
because it was literally anything that you invested in within this
mm,
certain bracket, which was a really broad bracket, was
yeah,
fully profitable. So it was like, and that actually was a big insight for me because what that made me realize was that anybody who was saying like I have a successful portfolio or I did well or this is good or this thing mooned and or I got a 2 or 3 a fucking 100x return or whatever it was, like all of them were literally in this little monkey bracket and they didn't have anything to brag about because literally a
yeah,
fucking like they had that smart octopus in China or whatever that was making all these like lottery picks. I don't remember what it was, but that octopus would have also had this great portfolio too in this market. And so
exactly.
I feel like that sort of fueled a lot of the market. It like compounded because it was like everybody,
Mhm.
even my cat, could have typed on my keyboard and made money at that
Yeah,
period in time, you know? So,
yeah.
mm,
When it was also one of those, it was a crazy. That was a crazy. Like that. I like the capital markets out of the space is crazy. Like we actually one of the reasons I've had a couple opportunities to kind of get involved
mm,
there, and I always kind of turned them down because performance was meaningless.
yeah,
I was up 200x for a
mm,
while.
yeah,
Like it was the numbers were crazy, and it had much more to do with kind of how aggressively we were gambling than any actual kind of skill.
yeah,
And I think we'll see. Yeah, it's interesting. We're going to kind of start seeing more sophisticated now that we actually have custodial solutions coming online. we'll start seeing more sophisticated actors getting involved there, and I think those markets will kind
Cool,
of mature
cool.
more too over time.
Okay, so
But
I've
I
got
think
maybe
one other,
go
yeah,
ahead, sure. Finish that thought if you want.
yeah, one other like thing I wanted to point out is I do think we're going to keep seeing more subpoenas and SEC action, and I think that's going to keep having an impact on pricing and activity.
Hmm.
So I think kind of the regulatory side will mature as custody comes online because custody is really critical for institutional involvement. But the project side will keep suffering because we are going to keep seeing subpoenas and basically forced refunds from the SEC, and that's just going to keep doing it. It's not projects are also not necessarily telling you when they've been subpoenaed or not.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's people should be suspicious.
Hmm. Okay, we may have lost Sam there, but this is a good time to wrap it up. If we don't get Sam back right away, I'm going to end. And there was a thought that I wanted to kind of finish on there is that yes, there are a lot of subpoenas definitely going on there, but I don't think that they matter as much. I think that it's actually pretty good, so that people can have a framework for their assets and stuff. And the SEC has been pretty active about it, and they're pretty open. And for the most part, I kind of agree because they just want to follow the spirit of the law. Like if people are putting their money into an asset, there should be some kind of protections there. I mean, especially if they're scammers, you know. So, and they have a pretty nice framework for it. So, anyways, that's enough for me today, guys. So, thank you for tuning in. I think the best way to reach out to Sam is to check out carbon.money. That's his site of his project. Or find him on Facebook. It's Sam Trautwein and be friends with him. He's a cool guy. All right, guys, I'm out.